Welcome. Namaste, beautiful souls. I would like to introduce you and welcome you to this series on my channel that is called Thoth Inspired. And this is a series that has been going on for some time. And I decided today to make this a public video so you could see what is happening in this series. And today I am talking about the Six of Swords. And in these discussions, we will be looking at the Thoth deck, the Thoth inspired decks, as well as many decks are that feel I feel they have inspired connections to a deeper understanding of this particular card. And today, I have some really unusual, uh, actually surprising decks on the table that. Um, when I was preparing for today's chat, I began to think about. So here we are in the middle of Aquarius season, inspired by the star card. And in this particular zodiacal sign, we have three decanic minors, the 5, 6, and 7 of swords. And today's discussion is around the 6 of swords. Many of you will be familiar with this particular image, and I have lots of different 6 of swords that we're going to bring into the discussion today. But what came to mind as I was signing off last week and as I was preparing for today's chat was the star card in the Slow Tarot. And this is a deck that I have gone back and forth on many, many times. And hi, Sharon. And the sextant in this particular card has always drawn my attention. The white gown on the woman, there's just something really magical in this card. And this discussion I'm going to be carrying forward into live readings later this afternoon. And there's just something about this navigation that feels extremely important to the understanding of this card. And I know a lot of people get tripped up on the title on the card when you see the word science, and yet you have more familiarity with an image similar to the one on the Waite Smith deck. And so, what I would like to do today is to try to weave together all of this energy so that we can see science, or the Six of Swords, in a different light and feel inspired by this card because this truly is an inspiring card. Here in Aquarius season, we have two planets that, depending on what astrological system you're working with, are influencing the energy of Aquarius, both Saturn and Uranus. And there is this aspect of knowledge and intelligence and cosmic intelligence that I feel is really important to the understanding of both of these cards. So let's look at science on the left and just review some of the symbology and also be aware of the number 6 as it is represented here in this card. And the sixes, I have to say, are my favorite cards in the tarot. Sixes representing the hexagram, the center of the tree of life, the center of the chakra system. This is the heart. This is the place of love and beauty and peace and harmony and understanding. And here we see these six intersecting, these six swords with their hilts are all on the outside, but they're pointing together. And if you use your imagination, you can see the two intersecting triangles which come together to create the hexagram. There's something very powerful in this card as well too, which I would like to dive into at some point, and that is to look at the relationship between the science card and the back of this deck as well too. So I won't be going into that today, but I'm just saying that out loud so I do come back to this point. Um, all right, so here we are at this central point in the tree of life where we also are influenced by the sun. And all of this number sixes, all of the sixes in the tarot have this influence of optimism and life and inspiration that the sun gives us, the energy that the sun gives us. And this particular decan of Aquarius, the is ruled by Mercury. And so we have these two planets that live very close together, shining brilliantly in this card. This is a such a brilliant, brilliant card. Now I want you to expand your um, horizons, and I think that's a really good word expression for this card, as to what science means. And I want you to think about a time, probably in junior high school, where your science teacher was, you had some really fun science experiments and you got to play with beakers and Bunsen burners, and for the first time, do some of these. Do you remember those little lighter things? Oh my goodness, I forget what they were called, but we used those to light the Bunsen burners, and what science is about, and the steps that your science teacher was trying to teach you. And there's this really interesting correspondence between what we are doing in the tarot and all of the self work that comes with studying the tarot and this crossover with science. And that has to do with being the witness, the observer, and learning to observe and note your observations and look at your observations through different lenses. Think about the idea of the microscope and what the microscope gives us and how we have that different perspective. And then look at the sextant and the idea of the sextant and the perspective that the sextant gives us and um, how the information that is way out there in the stars becomes part of maps and planning and charting, and what that all has to do with the energy of Mercury. And there's this just brilliant connection in this card between the magic and the mystery of science and this journey through the cosmos. Now, in the Suit of Swords, which is our card for today, we are one of the things that I try to understand and wrap my head around in the Suit of Swords is we're in this journey through intelligence, we're in this journey through wisdom. And in some cards, depending on how they are drawn and whatever deck we're looking at, the, the idea of wisdom is very absent. And we seem to be very much here in the here and now, and we're looking at matters of, uh, I want to say there's an aspect of intelligence there, and there's not this crossover of wisdom. And other decks, the Suit of Swords tends to be very, very spiritual. So it you really need to look at this card across a number of decks to understand its complexity. And then for a lot of you, me especially, with the work that I do, voice is also an important part of this. And so there is a component to this journey through the cosmos that is also going to help to free and bring some peace and harmony to our voice as well too. So all of these keywords are extremely important here. Now, these episodes are, um, while they are planned, there's a lot of riffing that happens here. And as I'm looking at the camera, I'm noticing the waters, which of course I've noticed many times in a Waite-Smith deck. And so we see the choppy waters in the foreground and the clear waters, the smooth waters in the distance. And just speaking about voice, one of the things I'm thinking about is the practice of mantra, the practice of learning to speak, and the freeing of the voice. And when I'm saying that, I'm being cognizant of this number six is a number of harmony and peace, and we're trying to bring up a resonance, a peaceful resonance to the voice. And I see this um, lack of resonance in the foreground, and then a more clear sound in the background. And I think that's really beautiful. the way that that could be viewed in that card. When I'm teaching mantra, when I'm practicing mantra, I'm very aware of the restriction that people have in their voices. The when voices begin to, you don't hear a clear sound. The voice almost begins to. There's a wave in it. So there's something kind of magical there. This whole idea of the star and this middle card in Aquarius season, we need to be simultaneously aware of the journey through water and the journey through space, the journey through time, because we also have these Saturnian influences. And if we look at the crossover of Mercury and Saturn here, also remember that with that, there may be, depending on the reading that you're doing, you might feel some connections with the magician begin to emerge. Or if you're doing a reading and the magician shows up with this card, there's also something very magical that's going on here too, because of the magician's connection with Mercury. The voice. I want to go back to the voice. So as the voice begins to find harmony, begins to find a peaceful resonance, as one begins to find one's authenticity in one's voice. And imagine in the Five of Swords with the dissonance of that energy, how the voice become freer and freer as we begin to get closer get closer to the end of the journey through the Suit of Swords. Now, I know there are a lot of challenging cards in the end of this deck, and I have given some thought to this, why it just gets more and more and more challenging, and we'll discuss this as we look at the other cards in this suit. All right, so science. I also want you to think about the scientist and the crossover with the magician and the scientist, and what similarities there may be there, and how the scientist's approach differs from the magician's approach, and what that might be representing in your reading. Because there's this action that is required in the Six of Swords. There's an action to move. There's an action of journey. There is a journey that is full of mystery and magic and the unknown, yet there's been a decisive action to shift the energy, to shift gears. We no longer are willing to stay in the chaos of the five. We have decided, we've made a decision to go forward. And when I think about, so fives, I call them the bridge cards. And I really like that association with the Hierophant as pontiff, just because of the language. And language is really powerful for me when I'm doing readings. I'm listening to what the querent is asking. I'm looking for repeating words, things that are kind of flowing through out of my mouth, and I'm like, whoa, okay, I've never said that before. And I love the way that these words fit together. So in the fives, we're at this bridge, and we've decided to cross the bridge. And here we are at this crossing. Now, look at, there's so many things we can look at here. The One of the things I rarely talk about is the prowess of the, I don't know if you would call him a gondolier, or the figure who is steering the boat, because that's definitely significant. And if you look at the arms of the magician, I'll get the magician in this card as well too. Notice the direction of the hands. So the hands are the same in the Waitsmith deck as they are in the Crowley deck. And that rod, the pole, is the same as in the Six of Swords. So we have that as above, so below relationship. This to me feels like, um, what's that expression? God doesn't give us more than we can handle. It feels as if the figure that is driving, steering, rowing the boat is fully capable. The load isn't more than they can bear. They are able to do this. Now, parts of me are also, I mean, there's a bazillion cards we could bring into connection here. This also makes me think of the Five of Pentacles in the Dust to Onyx deck and the whole idea of refugees and people that are moving through hardship. And if you aren't don't connect to that story personally, there's an aspect of leaving, and because we're in swords, so we're leaving lessons, we're leaving words, we're leaving arguments, we're choosing to leave something behind and move forward. And notice how we're not looking back. We're not looking back at it. And there is an intelligence, there's a cleverness, there's a witnessing, there's a process up to this journey. We don't know exactly where we're going. And often that is the case with the magician. That is the case with the scientist. We don't know exactly where we're going. This is an experiment. It's an experiment to go, and now think of the opening phrases to Star Wars or Star Trek or something like that, to go where no man has ever gone before. There's a level of trust that is absolutely required here. And I think part of that trust comes from the ancient wisdom that lies within the energy of the stars, the energy of navigation by stars, and in extension, the whole idea of what the Aquarius energy represents. This is ancient. This is very old wisdom that we are tapping into. And if you think about the practical ways this intelligence is applied, not only with the science, but it's applied through lots of different systems in our culture, through the law, government, things like that. And I think we need to include all of those, or we have the potential for all of those discussions here. So we could be journeying through an addendum or the rewriting of a constitution. You are part of a nonprofit organization and you are rewriting your constitution. You're rewriting something that was established a long time ago in your group. Maybe it's not quite as maybe that doesn't resonate, but there will be some sort of wisdom that is being considered and rethought. And I feel as if the next step is quite bold and it requires a tremendous amount of courage. And when I say that, I go to the sun and I think of the heart. We're sitting here at the center of the tree of life, this place of heart. This is the place of the heart chakra. This is the place of Leo. This is the place of courage. And all of these symbols, all of these archetypes live within these cards. The scientist must have foresight. The scientist must have courage and be willing to take a significant amount of risk to go the distance. Does that make sense? Now, bringing those two cards together. I just think it's so beautiful. Now we can also, this is from a new deck. It's on my table right now. This is the Wheat Moon Tarot, and this is the Six of Air, called the Cosmic Weaver. And this particular card comes from Ellen Lorenzi Prince's deck, the Dark Goddess Tarot. And I want to read to you, not from the Wee Moon little guidebook, but from the Dark Goddess Tarot, uh, part of the description here. Spider Woman creates through her thought, through her vision, through the powers of clarity and consciousness, through the powers of a universe that sings inside her. She creates the stars by spinning a web, lacing it with the precious dew and tossing it into the sky. She creates the stars to shine upon her people in the darkest night. And by the way, this card is the star card in the Dark Goddess Tarot. So think about those words, creating the inspiration, the wisdom in the darkest night. Sometimes I feel this is the dark night or one of the dark night of the soul cards. It is, um, it's really quite something. Hello. Hi, Pooja. Um, so really um, creative and expansive way that Waite and Pamela Coleman Smith interpreted the energy of this card to see, I don't know, just to create this scenario. So I hope that makes a bit more sense. Um, a bit more sense. Now let's also look at, this is another new deck that is on my table. And the reason I'm showing this card is to bring in another piece of this link. Because here, if you are aware of the Kabbalist, some more Kabbalistic associations, Pooja, I am doing readings at 12:30, so in 1 hour's time. So please come back then. This is a tarot discussion. I'm not doing readings here. Okay. This is the world of the knights. And in the Tiger Tarot, when I was looking at this card for the Six of Swords, I started to contemplate the energy of the knights and how this all just kind of fits together here so beautifully. And thinking about the energy of quest and strength and perseverance and that expression of going the distance and all of those things. And also, if you go back to the energy of the knights, contemplate their quests and how they were sent out on these quests, they often had a spiritual underpinning to them. And it all just makes so much sense. It's really beautiful. This is the Six of Swords from the Brady Tarot. And Emmy Brady poses a lot of questions in terms of this deck. And okay, there is, I'll get my pointer, there is a falcon hood here. And this is not a falcon, this is an owl. And one of the keyword is passage, great keyword for this card. So I'm thinking, all right, we're looking at an RWS influence. In this particular tarot deck, we have an influence from a lot of different systems of tarot. And I think she's built in some really amazing layers in this card. Who in the world would try to hood and train an owl? She goes on to describe how violent they can be and how much harm and how strong they are and something like that in her description. And so the question is, why in the world would someone even attempt to hood and train an owl? And this owl is moving forward, somehow has escaped, and is if you look at the rope and the hood as a symbol of the past and what they are dragging behind them. One of the questions I always have, and I find this really interesting in the Waite-Smith deck, and there's lots of different variations. Sometimes the swords are behind them, sometimes not all of the swords are in the boat. But here we have this sword of a hood that's being dragged behind. And one of the things that's quite poignant in this particular card is that the abundance of growth, we see the fungi, the greenery, what they are leaving, there's an abundance of food and resources and perhaps a luscious habitat that is being left behind because of the choice that they are have had to make to go forward. All right, so then there's just so many, and let's go back to the spider web here because this brings us to the notion of how important all of these connections are in reading the tarot, right? Everything is intersecting. The choice. So when I say choice, what tarot card does that take you to? And if you're thinking of sixes and the lovers, a bit of choice, we can also weave in that story here as well too. And so one of the things I try to do in reading the tarot is to allow this web of connections to guide something really quite brilliant in a reading. And because the mandala of the tarot is so very, very complex, any number of connections can arise in any given reading. And that might come through court card associations. It might come through symbols or colors or the way a particular deck creator has painted a deck. It might come through astrological references. It may come through oh, just any number of associations through the planetary associations, bringing in an awareness of what's going on with the magus or the magician in terms of the corresponding card. So if you're the more layers you are aware of, the more layers you can weave. And it's just so very, very brilliant. So yeah. Thank you. All right. I'm going to leave it at that for this discussion. And if you have further questions, please be sure to write those the in the comments below. And next week we will, and I described it as this week as as a rose between two thorns. And what I'm referring to is the fact that the Six of Swords is in the middle of the five and the seven. These two are rather challenging cards. And so I will try to um, weave the story of this journey from five to six to seven. And hopefully that will make a little more sense of what is going on in the Seven of Swords. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Have a lovely day. Namaste.